Hi, I'm Karlin Borisenko. In early 2020, I was the knitting Democrat who accidentally went viral on the internet for going to a Trump rally and then left the party. I became the conservative darling, was on all the shows, traveled around the country, and then realized that conservatives were no better than Democrats. If there's one thing that I've learned, it's that both political tribes are two sides of the same coin. But it wasn't all bad. On my journey, I became obsessed with understanding the woke ideology and the culture war. I broke the story of the city of Seattle doing segregated training with its employees.
How bad has this stuff become? The city of Seattle has now put out, I'm not kidding you, this is according to Dr. Karlin Borisenko, who's an organizational psychologist. The city of Seattle asked its white employees to voluntarily spend a day off in a training about their internalized racial superiority.
I broke the story that led to the first ever federal lawsuit against critical race theory in the schools. I broke the Coke Be Less White story, one of the biggest anti-woke stories of all time. It got over 30 million views. Coca-Cola's corporate headquarters even had to change their outgoing voicemail.
Throughout the past few days, you may have seen inaccurate reporting on the content of our recently launched diversity, equity, and inclusion training program.
I exposed the schools in Burlington, Vermont for grooming middle school children live on the internet. They called me an unwoke cult leader for that. And the Vermont Human Rights Commission slandered me publicly as being a hate channel. I even got called a hero in Breitbart for exposing that the Washington Post was writing a hit piece on Christopher Rufo. I have broken story after story after story about what's going on in the public schools, from Cambridge, Massachusetts, to autistic sex education, to the Department of Education in Michigan, literally training teachers all over the state how to groom children. I wrote a book called Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life. I host a podcast all about fighting back, and I'm downloading all of my knowledge to you on my Substack, karlin.substack.com. The world is a crazy place. We are literally surrounded by cults on all sides. On this show, we're going to do a deep dive into all aspects of the culture war, and I will show you the dark, dystopian underbellies on both sides. Here are the commitments I'll make to you. I will always tell you the truth. I will always bring you receipts. And if you stick with me, I promise you will see the world differently. Welcome to the cult. Please mount that like button for me and subscribe if you feel so inclined. Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. Welcome to The Cult. The Cult is a show that I stream Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. on YouTube, on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, and on Rumble, where we talk about, well, the far left takeover of the culture in the United States. And sometimes we talk about other stuff too, but mostly we focus on the far left. And I have to say, Maria, your super chat made my day. I will never forget that racial capitalism is where whites have used non-white people to acquire social and economic power. Yeah, you guys are never going to forget that, are you? You guys are never going to forget that. For people who missed Socialism Saturday over the weekend, we had, well, a little bit of a standoff in which I won, obviously, because I will always win. But basically, I challenged my chat to define racial capitalism, which they damn well should have been able to do because it's a topic that we've covered before. And they couldn't do it. And they just kept throwing out keywords after keywords after keywords. They kept saying, capitalism, Carl, it's just capitalism. I'm like, no. And then they said, it's private property. And I said, no. Yeah, the chat went retarded. The chat descended into the land of retardia, and no one could get it. And even after people started looking it up and chatting in the correct answer, and I would even display the correct answer on the stream and just ask people to repeat it, even then people were not paying attention. They weren't listening. They weren't trying to do anything other than put buzzwords in my chat. Well, guys, we're gonna do better than that from now on. We're gonna do better than that, aren't we? Because I gave them several minutes to figure out the definition of racial capitalism, And is racial capitalism itself like the most important thing? No, it's not. It's not. But the point was holding ourselves accountable to being better than everyone else on the internet when it comes to this stuff. That was the point. And I'm not going to tell people that they are right just to make them feel good when they are not correct. I'm not going to throw you guys softballs and then give you like the dopamine hit of saying you're right when it's not right, when it's not correct. Like other people might do that. I am not going to do it. And so after several minutes of me begging and pleading and cajoling with my chat to define racial capitalism when they damn well should have been able to do it in the first place, I ended the stream. Because if the chat isn't going to take it seriously, then why am I wasting my time on a Saturday night? And I was a good thing I did too, because I'd been craving these dumplings from my Chinese place down the street like for 24 hours previous to that stream. And the Chinese place was closing at 9 o'clock, and I ended the stream at like 8:30. And so if I hadn't ended the stream when no one could define racial capitalism, I wouldn't have gotten my dumplings that night. So that actually ended up working out well for me, because I really, 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 really like, you just get a craving for something, and like it just I had a craving for them, like, from 1 a.m. the night prior, and I was like, I really want those goddamn Chinese food. And so by ending the stream early, I got to have my Chinese food, so I was pretty happy about that. And as a bonus to that, you guys will never, ever, 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 ever forget the definition of racial capitalism in your lives. You're welcome. That's how we're going to do it from now on, guys. I am no longer messing around. Listen, man, it's been a weird, like, I had a weird weekend. I've had a weird, like, can I take some me time for a moment? We're going to do important stuff too. Don't worry. We're going to watch something important, but does anyone mind if I have me time just for a couple minutes? It's my stream. I can do what I want, I guess. I've had a weird last several days. Like, really weird. Like, I'm feeling just, maybe there's some energy thing going on that I need to ask Joshua about. I'll ask him tomorrow. We have our meetings on Tuesdays, and so I'll ask him about it. But like, I feel very just disconnected from a lot of things, and I kind of say that in like a good way, but I'm just like, I guess I'm feeling very disillusioned with the state of things, in that in the last week, it has become very clear to me that James Lindsay's audience doesn't know what the F they're talking about. And I know I've been talking about this lately, but this is not just me ragging on James Lindsay. This is actually important, because I always, in the back of my head, listen, man, I dedicated the entire last chapter in my book to that guy, and I don't regret it at all. And I stand by it. The point of the last chapter in my book, which is called Fight Like James Lindsay, the point of that chapter was to say that if everyone fought like James Lindsay, we wouldn't actually be having this problem. Like, and people need to get off their asses and actually do something. Now, whether I agree with him or not on a lot of things, he's actually gotten off his ass and done something, and I will always have respect for that, regardless of whether or not I agree with him on things. But it's become very, very clear to me in the past week or so that he has not taught his audience. And even more, and I already knew that. I kind of already knew that. But what became more clear to me was that he has become unhinged from reality in terms of like what is actually going on. Maybe he was never hinged into reality in the first place. I don't know. But I kind of started coming to this revelation last week, as I had all these James Lindsay stands coming into my feed and complaining and be like, how dare you think you know more than James Lindsay? And it's just like, first of all, like, I know it might seem like I view this as a competition. I don't actually view it as a competition. I never actually viewed myself to be in competition with James Lindsay or Chris Rufo or any of the other people covering this stuff. I really never did, because my attitude towards it has always been that there's more than enough for everyone. And I knew my approach was different than everyone else's approach. And so I was totally fine with the idea of like going into my small corner of the internet and just doing my thing and not worrying about anyone else, because like that it just made sense to me. I was like, this is not a competition. We can all do stuff, right? Like it's not, there's more than enough. And so that's what I did. And I didn't pay attention to what was going on with the rest of them for like probably since 2.5 years. Like June of 2021 was the last time I really listened to James Lindsay. And I'm going to tell you what it was. It was, I went to his first ever in-person workshop in Tampa. It was somewhere in Florida. I think it was in Tampa. It was a great workshop. It was awesome. It was awesome. Like, I have nothing bad to say about it. Learned a lot from it. But after that, I stopped listening to him. And it wasn't like a personal thing. It was just that I wanted to be able to focus on what I was doing, and I didn't want to be influenced by him. I wanted to come to my own conclusions, right? And so not only did I stop listening to him, though, I stopped listening to everyone, because I wanted to be able to focus on the content that I was evaluating and be able to come to my own conclusions. And I did that successfully, I think. I think I've been very successful at the strategy that I really started in earnest in early to mid 2021, when I was done writing my book. Because that was when I wrote my book. My book came out in 2022, but like I wrote it in 2021. Anyway. And it really just never occurred to me. It never occurred to me that things would go so flying off the goddamn rails in the intervening years. And it never occurred to me that what James Lindsay was cultivating was not so much, it was not so much a place where he was actually teaching people things. He was cultivating a tribalist army of like flying monkeys that maybe can parrot some of the things that he says, but aren't actually capable of doing what my audience can do, which is actually teach these concepts to other people because they understand what the concepts are. That really never occurred to me. It never occurred to me that that would happen. It never occurred to me that in the course of me focusing all of my energy on the real world implementation of these ideas, that at some point, and I don't know when this happened because I haven't been paying attention to him, at some point I got ahead of him in terms of the understanding of what's been going on in the real world. And I think it's been like starting to hit me over the past like several weeks that this is the case. But you guys got to understand, when I first started doing this, I was in awe of what James Lindsay had done. Truly. And I still am. I think what he's done is incredible. Like, but to start to come to the realization that the person that you thought was leading the charge in all of this, the person that I was more than willing to like sit back and let him do that, and I've always said too, like with Chris Rufo, like Chris Rufo is meant to be doing what he's doing. Like I'm perfectly like he is supposed to, like that is the role he should be doing. He is so good at it, and it's not a role that I want. And if he hadn't stepped into that role, I probably would have tried to, but he did, and so I didn't have to, and so I was happy about that, because I don't want to be like this perfectly branded thing. I'm way too committed to like an authentic presentation rather than this perfect kind of politically polished thing that you have to be to do what he's doing. But it really never occurred to me that in the course of this, I would get so far ahead of their understanding of what's actually going on in the real world. And that's been hitting me over the past several days. And I don't know if it's like an energy thing or like what's going on, but that's terrifying to me. That's genuinely and truly terrifying. And I think I've kind of gone into a little bubble where like, I'm like, I don't want to be this person. Like, I never wanted to be this person. I don't want to be, like, it is genuinely terrifying for me to think about the fact that there's no one ahead of me to kind of like take the machete and be cutting down the trees on the way. 'Cause I don't know that anyone can train to be in that sort of position. And I think a lot about like I think a lot about history in terms of like the founding fathers and stuff like that, in terms of like we know the interactions between the founding fathers and where they would bicker and where they would, agree with each other because they wrote everything down. They wrote letters to each other, they wrote journals, they wrote all this stuff. We have access to those documents. So we know that the founding fathers weren't always in agreement with each other and the founding fathers didn't always play nicely with each other. And there were some things that they vehemently disagreed upon and fought about, and there were feuds about it and stuff like that. And we know that because they wrote everything down and documented it, right? And one of the reasons that I really doubled down on Substack at the end of 2022 was because I saw my role in this as just journaling. That's what journalism is, right? That's what journalism is. It's journaling. It's documenting stuff. Like, journalism itself is not hard. People who work for corporate media try to make it seem hard, but it's not. Like, what journalism is, it's literally just fucking journaling. It's documenting what is going on. And so thinking about like, and I've had a lot of people tell me over the years, they say, Carlin, the stuff that you're creating is not for people right now. It's for people 25, 50, 100 years from now, which kind of sucks, by the way. But I've thought a lot about that in terms of just like, this is why I try to like cover stories that aren't being covered anywhere else. This is why I'm so big on just primary source documents and putting receipts out there and stuff like that and letting people decide for themselves what they think. I don't view it as my job to change anyone's mind. I don't want to be on a political tribe in any way. So I've been thinking a lot about all that over the past several days, and to be honest, I'm a little terrified of being in this position, and this is not something I expected, and it is genuinely terrifying to me. And because I don't know how someone prepares for that, and I feel like a responsibility in that because I really do believe that I really do believe this stuff is a problem. Like, I think that a lot of people are gonna lose their kids. I think a lot of people are gonna be hurt. I think a lot of people are going to I think that we're going to lose our country to this stuff. I really do. And it's like, how do you have the perspective that I have on this and not do something about it? But I'm in a land of people where no one is doing anything about it and no one is listening, and the influencers that are so-called leading the charge in all this don't know what they're talking about. I've said a lot of times that I've never felt like more of a conspiracy theorist in my life, but I also am absolutely certain that I'm right because I've been right so many times in the last couple of years. I got I got a call over the weekend, and I'm not going to say from who, and I'm not going to say who's involved with it. But I'm having a moment of therapy on the internet. Thank you. We're going to do important stuff, I promise. But like, I just need to talk for a second. I had a call over the weekend from a friend of mine that I've known for a while, for several years. He's a good dude. And he's one of those people that no matter what bullshit was slung about me or what lies were told on the internet about me, he was always just kind of there. And we were always just chill. And we had good chats and we, like, I think supported each other. Like when everyone else was going crazy around us, like We disagree on a lot, but like he was always just there. We were always just chill. He never cared about any of the bullshit. He could see through a lot of it. He's really, really connected within the Republican Party. Like really connected at very high levels in the Republican Party. And so it was like chats that I've had with him have been like actually very nice because it showed me over the course of like years that even when all this shit was hitting the fan on the internet, there was still like normal people that were actually like running things. Okay. So I had a phone call with him over the weekend, and without giving away too much, basically it has come to my attention that people who stabbed me in the back years ago are now having the shocking revelation that I was right all along. And that's another thing that it's like, you know what, you fuckers? I was screaming this from the rooftops for years. You slandered me. You defamed me. You twisted what was going on to make it something it wasn't. And now behind the scenes, and who knows if this will make its way into the public yet, which is why I'm not saying who it is. And I'm going to be like really vague about what it's about. It is bittersweet. It is bittersweet. It is. Because it's moments like that where I'm like, and again, I don't mean to pat myself on the back, but I have been ahead of a lot of people on a lot of things for years, for literally years. And it's not until you see things play out that you realize that you were like, I started calling out this bullshit at the beginning of 2021. A lot of the bullshit that's going on the right, I started calling this out at the beginning of 2021. Literally, you can go back on my Twitter and look. I was like, Carlin's crazy. Carlin's crazy. She was always a leftist. She's just a leftist. She was just a grifter. Meh, 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 meh. But then you play that out over the course of a couple years. And all of a sudden you look back and you're like, holy shit, the crazy bitch was right all along. And so is it possible that I really am ahead of all of them now, and that will only become clear a couple years from now? That's kind of like what I'm getting at. Because I've really been trying to wrap my head around this, and I know this might seem weird for people who aren't directly in the situation, but I've been right about a lot of shit for the last couple years. And now people behind the scenes, whether or not they admit it in public, although I really hope they put on their big boy pants and admit it in public, they're starting to come to the realization that I was right about things from 3 fucking years ago. And they're trying to work up the courage to pick up the phone and apologize to me for all of the bullshit that they put me through and their friends put me through for no good fucking reason because they didn't want to admit I was right 3 years ago. And so I look at what's going on right now. And this realization that, holy shit, James Lindsay is not teaching his audience the things that I thought he was teaching them. Holy shit, Christopher Rufo is on Twitter right now saying Bill Ackman is being attacked for being white and a man, when Bill Ackman is not being attacked for being white and a man. Bill Ackman is being attacked for being a capitalist. And I can see this clearly. And I know what's going on because I've reverse engineered all of it, and I can see where all this is going. How many people are going to be coming to me a couple years from now, hat in hand, saying, Carlin, you're right all along, and we're sorry we didn't listen to you. I'm going to be like, well, it would have been nice if you did, because it's kind of too late now. It might even be too late even if they came to me right now. It might even be too late now. It's so easy to see why the socialists are winning. It's the same reason you were able to get ahead. Yeah. Yeah. So, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed right now with things, and I'm feeling like some people might think it's like it would feel like validating to know that I was right all along and that I was ahead of this stuff all along. And it is validating, but it's also kind of like uh I don't really know what to do with it. And it's like I don't know what it all means, and I don't know where I'm supposed to go from here with it, or if I'm even supposed to do anything. Maybe I just keep going as I'm going. But there does feel to me to be some, like, greater responsibility once you realize that everyone else has it fucking wrong, and they aren't paying attention because 'cause they're just doing tribalist bullshit, and they don't actually care about winning, they just care about being on the team that gets the gotcha point. I don't know. So I'm feeling weird, is what I'm saying. And there's reasons that I'm feeling weird, and I'm really trying to kind of, like, acclimate to this, and I'm trying to figure out what to do from here with it, I guess. And that's really all I have to say, but thank you guys for letting me talk. There's not any big revelation at the end where I'm like, "And here's the plan," because I don't know what the plan is. Maybe the plan is just that I keep doing what I'm doing. And, I mean, the positive thing about the last several years is that it has shown me emphatically who my friends are. It has shown me emphatically who I can count on and who I can't. It has shown me emphatically it's it's shown me how to identify the people that I can trust and the people that I can't trust. And I've been very blessed to for as many people who have caused bullshit in my life, I'm very, very blessed at the number of people who were there all along and were just in the background and supported me all along and would always take a phone call and would always, give me a different perspective and would always, contribute financially if they could. And if they couldn't, that was fine too. But I've had a lot more of that than people think because they don't know what my network looks like behind the scenes. And even though it's been disappointing to me, the people that I couldn't count on, it's been disappointing to me, all of the influencers who have shit the bed. It's been disappointing how many people never actually believed what they claim to believe. There are good people out there that are really trying to get shit together. And I don't know if there are enough of us, but I'm blessed to know a lot of good people. And hopefully, the people who came to the party late will get their shit together and pick up the phone and issue me the largest apology they have ever given to anyone in their lives, and the person that this is directed to knows who I'm fucking talking about. And then they're gonna use their Twitter account to tweet out a fucking mea culpa like they have never done in their life, because there is no moving forward if there is not a public mea culpa. And we'll see if that happens. We will see if that happens. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't. And the people who couldn't put on their big boy pants and do the right thing can continue to play with the losers who have continued to fuck them over and lie to them over and over and over again for years while swearing they were the good ones. So I guess we'll see. Last thing I'll say about this is I am in a really advantageous position because in the course of all the bullshit, in the course of everything, I was able to set up my own system and my own supporters and my own community that it doesn't really matter if the people who have wronged me and stabbed me in the back unnecessarily get their shit together. It doesn't really matter because I have my own thing going. And so I don't need them. If they don't want to do the right thing, then I don't need them. It would be nice if they manned up and did the right thing, but I don't need them to. And so if it does happen, it'll be on my terms. It will not be on their terms. It will be on my terms. And I want everyone here to know that. I am not going to go hat in hand to someone who fucked me over begging for a crumb because I don't need it. If we can work out a thing that feels good to everyone, that gets things back on track, fine. But if I do anything with anyone, it's going to be on my fucking terms. And I want you guys to hear that, and I want you guys to know that, and I want you guys to always trust that. Okay? And the way that's possible is because I have an amazing group of supporters who support the work I'm doing with monthly and annual contributions on my Substack for $8 a month or $80 a year. And I apologize for not getting out the newsletter last night on my Substack. I did send it out today. I apologize. It was just a weird day yesterday. That's all I can say. There's actually no good excuse for why I didn't get the newsletter out yesterday. It was just a weird ass day. My head was all foggy. I was like, I don't really know what's even going on right now. And so I did it today. It's the first time I've ever missed a Sunday newsletter since I started doing them. I apologize. I know you guys forgive me, but the newsletter with the supporter perks is up on the Substack now to include 2 Zoom calls that we do on Mondays and Wednesdays, Mondays at 7 p.m., Wednesdays at noon, to include your Discord link, to include your 10% off in the Unwoke Art merchandise store. And I can't do this without you guys. My goal is, and always has been, to be completely independent of everything else going on. And the only way I can do that is from people like you. So thank you for supporting the work I'm doing. I really do appreciate it. Now let's get down to business. We are going to be watching. This was actually a live private training that Rethinking Schools did last week. And I was considering this for a spy stream. Now, if you haven't been following up with what's going on in the Substack, we did 2 spy streams last week. And when I do a spy stream, we go inside a live woke training. We go into their private training that's not being recorded or broadcast on the internet or anything like that, and we watch it. And normally I do like to get these things live, but last week was interesting because last week was the official start of the Black Lives Matter in Schools, like week of action or whatever. And there were actually 2 presentations at exactly the same time. They were at the same fucking time from 2 woke organizations. I was like, you guys couldn't coordinate with each other so you could have them at different times so I could spy stream on both of you? No, apparently that didn't happen. But when I was trying to figure out, I was like, which one do I watch? Because they both look pretty woke and pretty good. I got an email from Rethinking Schools at one of the 19 accounts that I've signed up for their stuff on so that they don't know who I am and they can never suss me out because I have all these different fake identities. And I got an email from Rethinking Schools saying, don't worry, if you can't make the webinar tonight, we're going to put it on our YouTube channel. And I was like, all right, sold. And then we went and watched the other one for Spy Stream. The other one was good. Lots of talk about capitalism. Always like that. So we are now going to be watching the presentation that Rethinking Schools, and by the way, if you guys are unfamiliar with Rethinking Schools, this is a socialist activist organization that gets socialist curriculum into schools. They don't call it socialist curriculum, but it's socialist curriculum. The people running this organization were presenters at the socialism conference. The people running this organization are involved in all of these education activist groups. So this is far left. And this is an organization that is deliberately developing curriculum that teachers can literally download on the internet for a couple bucks. And they produce materials around that. And so we're going to be watching the private training that they did last week that they have now put on their YouTube channel. Thank you, Rethinking Schools, for that. And the presentation is called Centering Collective Value. On February 6th, Rethinking Schools, defending the early years. So looking at young kids in schools, and Black Lives Matter in school were in conversation on centering collective value in the early years as a way to celebrate the 2024 Black Lives Matter at School Week of Action. The 2024 Week of Action theme is centering and celebrating collective value. Of course, anytime we hear the word collective, we know collective means socialist. So we always want to pay attention anytime you hear the word collective come up. The Black Lives Matter at School's guiding principle of collective values states we are guided by the fact that all Black lives, regardless of sex assigned at birth, gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation, economic status, ability, disability, education, location, age, immigration status, religious beliefs, or disbeliefs, matter. None of us are free until we are all free, and we know what they're trying to be free of. They're trying to be free of capitalism. That is what they want to be free of. Defending the Early Years Executive Director Denisha and Rethinking Schools Executive Director Sierra will be in conversation with some other people. Early childhood educators, creators, classroom teachers, kindergarten teacher, and members of the Black Lives Matter at School Steering Committee. Panelists discuss how we teach and organize for racial justice, especially in the early years. So they're going to discuss how to teach social justice and far-left activism to kids in elementary school. They offer stories, examples, and concrete strategies of anti-racist pedagogy. Anti-racist means anti-capitalist, and abolitionist practice. Abolition means, well, usually abolition is in regard to abolishing the prison industrial complex. It can also be in regards to abolishing capitalism, which would actually be overlapping because those are two basically the same thing. They discuss how to lift Black joy, confront anti-Blackness, and build an authentic partnership to fight for more equitable and just schools. This is what we're watching today, guys. It is about an hour long, so hopefully we can get the whole thing in. I will try to keep the interruptions and the explanations to a minimum, but we do pop quizzes and stuff like that. And so just to make sure people do retain the content that we're watching, because I don't want to ever have another example of that racial capitalism thing again. I hope everyone learned a lesson. I'm not effing around. All right. That's what we're watching today, guys. We're going to get into it in 1 second. I just want to remind everyone, too, that on Wednesday, we're doing something a little different on Wednesday because there's this dude, Adam Green, who has some ideas about the origins of Christianity and Islam, for that matter. And I want to talk to him and I want to hear about his ideas. And so I'm telling you guys about this early. It's not directly related to the socialism stuff, although I am sure there will be connections between the groups he's talking about and the socialism stuff, and maybe we can ask him about that. But I want to do like basically an intro to his kind of ideas for people who are not familiar with him. But the thing of it is that his ideas are kind of complicated. And so if people want to do a little homework to prepare for talking to him, I put in the description of this video his Odyssey playlist so that you guys can go and kind of familiarize yourself with his ideas if you want to. And that way, when he comes on the channel on Wednesday, we can ask him some good questions. Okay, so that is set up on the channel right now. You can go right into the description, find his Odyssey playlist, and that's going to be there for everyone. One last thing before we get started, I do want to remind people that I have relaunched my kind of haphazard clip channel, and I'm asking people to subscribe to it. Hang on, subscribe to my clip channel. There's the link. Now, this is something where people have always asked me to do clips. I get requests for this like all the time. And I'm always like, I do clips. They're on my main channel, but people can't find them for some reason. So I was like, okay, well, why don't I just I originally started this clip channel when I relaunched the show last year. And then I changed the format of the show. So I just stopped posting to it. But I'm like, if people want clips in a way that is easier to find than scrolling through all the videos on my channel, let's mostly keep this channel to mostly like live streams. And I'll do clips on this occasionally. But if you want to subscribe to my clip channel, head over to youtube.com/@thebestcult, and I will pin that to the top of the chat, and go get subscribed, man. go, because I'm shadow banned to high heaven on this channel. I have been for years, but maybe if we get the other channel working and I get clips flowing on there, maybe that'll help. I don't know, but at least it'll give people a place where they can find the clips that's not on my Substack, things like that. So go subscribe to the other channel. I really do appreciate it. All right, let's get into things. Finally, let's see what Rethinking Schools had to say. Please mount the like button for me if you would be so kind. And I want to do a shout out to everyone watching over on Rumble. Let me see. Let me just pull the chat on Rumble. Sorry, Rumble chat. I wasn't paying attention to you. Did PragerU come around? Oh, no. No. Who I was talking about are not PragerU, and I am not ever open to working with them in any capacity again, to be very clear. Like, that's a non-fucking starter. I'll tell you that right now. That is a non-starter. So I'm sorry if that's the organization you were hoping for, but no. No. Doing that PragerU video was one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made in my life. I regret it so much. I can't even tell you. But that's a different thing for a different day. All right, let's get started, guys. Let's see what they had to say in this here presentation.
None of us are free. None of us are free until we are all free. There are 13 guiding principles and 4 demands: end zero tolerance, implement restorative justice, hire and retain Black teachers, mandate Black history and ethnic studies, and hire more counselors, not cops. Panelists will discuss how we teach and organize for racial justice, especially in the early years. They'll offer stories, examples, and concrete strategies for anti-racist pedagogy and abolitionist practice. They will discuss how to lift Black joy, confront anti-Blackness, and build authentic partnerships to fight for more equitable and just schools.
Does anyone have any thoughts on like the what is it with like this Black and trans joy thing? What do we think they mean by joy? Because like anyone who's talking about like joy, like Black joy or trans joy, like they don't actually seem to be very joyous when they're talking about these things. So, and this is just a general question, and you guys can think about it if you want. Does anyone have any ideas about what they mean when they say joy, like blank joy? Just something to think about. I don't know the answer to it.
Thanks, Tanisha. All right, we are so excited to jump into conversation today.
Yeah, actually, Prometheus, it might be this. Does joy mean liberation? Maybe, but they wouldn't be experiencing it now. They wouldn't be experiencing it now if it was liberation. Just something to think about.
We are joined by incredible panelists who I admire and I'm so inspired by. So I'm looking forward to just being in community and to learn from y'all tonight. So we're joined by Lalenia Garcia, Key Gross, and Makai Kellogg. And we're going to start with a roll call. We're going to have each panelist introduce themselves, share a little bit about who they are and about their work. So Lalenia, welcome. We'll start with you.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be in space with these amazing educators. My name is Lalenia. When you talk about me, the words that feel good to me are she and her. I teach kindergarten in New York City. I've been working in New York City since 2000.
Kindergarten.
Which makes me feel kind of old, but also, kind of comfortable. I work in private schools mostly.
Oh,
I have never
good.
actually taught in a public school. When I finished my master's degree, there was a hiring freeze. And so I have been working in private and charter schools, mostly in independent schools for my entire career. And so when I think about Black Lives Matter at school, there have been times when I am teaching Black Lives Matter at school to really affluent, really wealthy white populations. And so that is some of what I've been thinking about a lot recently. I got involved with Black Lives Matter in school in 2017 when I saw the principles and I immediately...
The scarves. This is a great question from Kate. What is with the scarves? The scarves are a representation of solidarity with the Palestinians and with the revolution. That's what they are. It's like a visual, it's like when they wore the safety pins on their shirt to tell kids that they were safe, or like the pride flags or things like that. It's a visual representation of solidarity with the Palestinians.
Knew that my task was to translate those principles into language that early childhood educators could use in their classrooms. And I have been so honored to work with people in that and to have it grow from a Google Doc that was shared to a coloring book that my friend and I, printed out in Brooklyn and carried around to curriculum shares. And now we have an actual workbook and a hardcover book with some really beautiful illustrations. And I had the privilege of writing a history of the Black Lives Matter movement and getting to write to children and also their adults about why Black Lives Matter and why these principles, which are so ingrained in early childhood education anyway, are crucial for our children, for our communities, and for our world. And so I'm real thrilled to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Love, love, love those resources. Love the coloring book. So thank you so much. Next, Key, I'm going to turn it over to you. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
What's up, everybody? My name is Key.
They, them.
I use they, them pronouns.
Knew it.
I'm also really excited to be here in space with all of you all.
You can always tell a they, them.
I am a former classroom teacher. I've taught everywhere from in childcare and also in charter schools. So I taught infants, toddlers, 2-year-olds, preschool, and I spent my last 5 years in Harlem in kindergarten.
Yeah, we'll do a poll. Don't worry, Rottweiler, I got you.
Coach of inquiry-based learning, and really did a lot of work around organizing Black Teachers Matter when I used to be in schools. Subsequently kind of shifted my focus when I realized that, some of us had different politics. And so there was a lot more work that
Seriously? So PS76 on Rumble says Kai, the they, them that we're hearing right now, is the founder of that woke kindergarten bullshit that they're doing in California. Is that real? Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny that Kai, on a Rethinking Schools panel, which again, Rethinking Schools is a socialist activist organization. And now we've got Kai, the founder of this woke kindergarten bullshit. That's funny. Good spot, PS76.
To be done. I started woke kindergarten when I was actually in schools, really as just a page to be able to share the things that I was making while I was in there.
Holy shit.
And when the pandemic hit and I had since left schools in 2018, we saw that early childhood infrastructure crumbled. Right?
Wow.
Nobody knew what to do.
Wow. And I just want to point this out because in the entirety of conservative influencers have been bitching and complaining about woke kindergarten, which, by the way, I covered woke kindergarten like a year ago. P.S. And that's part of the reason why I didn't talk about the woke kindergarten bullshit, because I was like, this is old news. I covered this a year ago. Where the fuck were you guys? Are any of the conservative influencers who have been reading about woke kindergarten all over social media, did any of them bother to track this presentation down to find the founder of woke kindergarten talking about Black Lives Matter in schools? Did any of them bother to do that? Or were they just reading about it on Twitter for likes and clicks and cash and stuff like that? This is why we're ahead of everyone else, guys.
Because really it's truly the foundation of everything.
Damn it.
Capitalism cannot work without it, without us at all. And
we didn't even need to do the poll. We already won. She couldn't even get through the goddamn introductions without saying capitalism. Are you serious? God damn it. Now I have to go back and clip this. God damn it. Thank you for your patience. Hang on. I have to figure my recording thing because I changed it earlier and I don't want to record the whole thing without actually recording the sound. Wow. All right. Clip. I swear to God, this is the stuff that's going to drive me to an early grave. I swear to God. Okay, let's listen again.
What's up, everybody? My name is Key. I use they, them pronouns. I'm also really excited to be here in space with all of you all. I am a former classroom teacher. I've taught everywhere from in childcare and also in charter schools. So I taught infants, toddlers, 2-year-olds, preschool, and I spent my last 5 years in Harlem in kindergarten. I was also an instructional coach of inquiry-based learning and really did a lot of work around organizing Black Teachers Matter when I used to be in schools. Subsequently kind of shifted my focus when I realized that, some of us had different politics. And so there was a lot more work that needed to be done. I started Woke Kindergarten when I was actually in schools, really as just like a page to be able to share the things that I was making while I was in there. And when the pandemic hit and I had since left schools in 2018, we saw that early childhood infrastructure crumbled, right? Nobody knew what to do because really it's truly the foundation of everything. Capitalism cannot work without it or without us at all. And I noticed that folks were having a hard time figuring out what to do with their kids at home. But at the same time, George Floyd was murdered. So we have this pandemic, George Floyd is murdered, and people don't know how to talk with their kids about Black folks being murdered by the police, especially very young children. And I thought to myself, after I had been consulting and doing creative stuff for a while, I was like, wow, I'm still an educator. I don't need to be in the classroom to still be a teacher. And we're often told that we're not teachers anymore. And so I thought to myself, well, now I'm free. Now I can do whatever I want. And I really kind of pivoted Woke Kindergarten in a way that was responsive to both of those catastrophes happening at the same time. And so Woke Kindergarten's pedagogy really was created in that way. And I started off making 60-second texts, which are big concepts for little people in 60 seconds, really text to anchor really critical conversations. And so I do have a text called Black Lives Matter, which is really about affirming the humanity of multiple children who were murdered by the police, but being able to talk about that in a way that's appropriate for young children, in a way that sustains and preserves their humanity as well. And then made a resource around the word protest because we were seeing all these uprisings happening. And so ultimately, Woke Kindergarten has become this abolitionist early childhood ecosystem and visionary creative portal. And I like to say that we support young children and also support the adults, all of you in their lives. I like to call them our little comrades. And basically, moving towards more liberatory futures in learning and really thinking about how we can do that in an anti-carceral way. So that's what I do now with Woke Kindergarten. And I wish I was still with kids every single day, but I do have youth sessions and workshops and all of that. But all the offerings I put out are free and in service of all children because all of these children are our children. And I'm just happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kia.
I like to call them little fucking comrades. Seriously? I like to call them little comrades, the founder of Woke Kindergarten. All right, let me just make sure I've got this clip saved. God fucking damn it. God damn conservative goddamn influencers who pretend to care about this stuff, but then don't even bother to try to find any of this stuff. They just want to re about Woke fucking Kindergarten, which I covered a year ago. God damn it. This is why the right is losing. Because the founder of Woke Kindergarten is talking live on the internet last week after all the Woke Kindergarten shit has hit the fan, and the founder of Woke Kindergarten is live on the internet talking about how she calls kids little goddamn comrades. All right, well, this was already worth it.
I've used so many of your resources in my own work as a dance teacher, particularly for creative movement work with young people. So thank you. I appreciate you. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Makai. Welcome.
Hi, good evening. I'm Makai Kellogg. My pronouns are she, her. I'm an early childhood educator and equity and diversity coordinator at School for Friends,
How many
which is a
views
Quaker
on this
preschool
video?
in
Let's see.
Washington, D.C. I've been in the early childhood.
97 views on this video. This was put up 4 days ago. I have been the only person screaming about rethinking schools for a while. I've known about rethinking schools for like a year. I have the Rethinking Schools social justice teacher planner sitting on my floor. Like, if conservative influencers and conservative journalists had done their fucking job, they could have found woke kindergarten a long ass time ago. Before they were paid, what was it, like $250,000 or something like that? But no, they can't be bothered to do actual journalism. I swear I'm going to stop complaining about this at some point, but I just really resent that I'm being put in the position of needing to do actual journalism that I was never prepared to do in my life because the real journalists are too busy reading on Twitter. 97 views this has.
Field for 14 years and worked primarily with 3 to 5-year-olds. In my equity and diversity role, I lead the Parents of Multiracial Children group and Equity and Diversity Parent Book Club. And I also support and provide training for my colleagues and families on anti-bias education. At my school, I launched the Black Lives Matter at School Week of Action, and I contributed a chapter about that experience in the book of Black Lives Matter at School, an Uprising for Educational Justice. I'm an advisory board member for the DC Area Educators for Social Justice, and I co-lead the Anti-Bias Early Childhood Working Group. I love to write, and I have a blog, Makai's Early Childhood Equity Endeavors. And recently, I've been working on a book on empathy and kindness, which I'll share a little bit about more later. I'm a mom.
Empathy and kindness is like when socialists say empathy and kindness, what they're trying to do is teach kids to be little collectivists. Do you guys understand that? This is something we haven't really talked about. When they're talking about empathy and kindness, what they're really trying to do is to teach kids that everyone else is their responsibility. That's what that's about. It's not about teaching them just be nice to people and you know like people who are different than you and be kind to people who, this is not about that. This is about trying to brainwash kids to get them to see themselves as part of the collective. Exactly, Tayton. This is about collective care. That is what that's about. It's weaponized empathy. Exactly, Stony Baloney. Empathy and kindness is just communist unity. They're trying to make them little comrades.
I have a 4.5-year-old and 2 bonus sons, one in college and one is a high school senior. And I'm just so honored to be here with everyone tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Makai. And just to let everybody know, you got to check out Makai's blog. It's so good.
Yes, I second that. We shared one of her blogs at Defending the Early Years, and we still get comments every now and people discover it and they love it.
Exactly.
I'm really excited about the book that's coming out soon too. So definitely want to plug that later. All right. So so great. I've been fortunate to know all of you guys so much, like Sam, and so it's so great to have you here. So let's get into this conversation. So in light of the backlash, right, that we saw, Key mentioned George Floyd, it was like 2 things happened at the same time. Like George Floyd is murdered. We're in the middle of a pandemic and every major city in the country took to the streets to protest. And then within 2-3 months later, it was like CRT is racist, right? Like the backlash just came fast, right? It came really fast. And it was a direct response to the racial justice uprisings of 2020. So now, how do you respond when someone asks you why we have to keep lifting the principles and demands of Black Lives Matter, right? I've heard this from teachers in New York City. Isn't it time to move on? Shouldn't we be focusing on something else, right? How do you guys respond? We'll start with Key, then we'll go to Makai, and then Lalania.
Yeah, so when I hear this question, like my first response is like, when Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. because we get the all lives crew coming at us full force. But when Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. I mean, we are witnessing anti-Blackness manifesting on a global scale currently. Like, we are witnessing Palestinian children being massacred every single day by the IOF, who trains our police forces here, and our police forces murder Black children.
That's true, actually.
So at the same time, we are witnessing this manifestation of anti-Blackness existing in a very violent space. So like, when Black Lives Matter globally, then all lives matter globally. And so people might not be ready to hear that, but that's the truth. And I'm really not the one to come to get anything being soft, because at the end of the day, we see the parallels of what's happening in the street happening in our schools. We're seeing the carcerality of anti-Blackness existing literally within our schools. We're seeing schools literally functioning as prisons. We are witnessing a school prison nexus. It's not just a pipeline anymore. And so ultimately, like, I think, and I don't
mean, that's always been true, and that doesn't have to do with just Black people.
For me, it's very simple. When Black children, like my work, like when I remember who it's for.
By the way,
and I remember that my work is,
if they really thought, now I actually don't disagree. I think the schools do function exactly like prisons. I don't think that's just true in inner city schools. I think that's true of schools everywhere. But if these people really thought that schools were the same as prisons, they would be calling to defund the public schools. They're not doing that because they want to control the public schools. It's the same reason why conservatives will never call to defund the public schools, even though they know that the public schools are ground zero for all of this woke bullshit. But they will never call to defund them. Why? Because they want to control them and use them for their own purposes. The only ethical position. So both sides, essentially both sides, think the public schools are irrevocably effed up, but both sides also want to control them. The only ethical position on this is to defund the public schools entirely and privatize it. That is it. But this is about warring factions trying to control kids. Both sides want to indoctrinate kids. This is why I am not in favor of PragerU in schools. That might piss some people off, and God knows I have my own separate issues with PragerU. But in general, it wouldn't even matter if it was like, what other organizations, like, what is it? Hillsdale College has a curriculum. I'm not in favor of that being in schools. I'm not in favor of any conservative activist organization making a curriculum for schools, because that's just conservative indoctrination. It's no different than leftist indoctrination. All indoctrination should be bad. But no, we're in the middle of warring factions that both want to control the public schools, and that's why neither faction will call to defund them.
Is for specifically like Black children, Black queer and trans children, Black disabled queer and trans children, then I know my work is for everyone, that no one is excluded, right? And so if we want to actually live in a society where everyone is included, where everyone matters, where everyone's humanity is affirmed and prioritized, then we need to remember that we need to focus and center Black lives and all of that, because by doing that, we center everybody.
Thanks, Key. And focusing more on the school side of things, these policies are being passed that prevent children from learning about their own history, seeing themselves in a book, or even to show up as their authentic selves. And that's not okay. And so to reiterate, we have to keep lifting the guiding principles and demands because they're necessary to change the longstanding institutionalized oppression that the education system in this country has imposed on Black children and children with marginalized identities. And so when educators and families and administrators understand and agree with this, then integrating the guiding principles and demands, like you're saying, Key, they benefit all children.
What everyone has said, really. I remember when the Black Lives Matter at School Steering Committee in New York City read How We Get Free by the Combahee River Collective. And right. So we're not free until we're all free. And when we center the most vulnerable, that helps everybody. Dignity is not a cup of sugar where we run out. Like this idea that if we are affirming Black lives, if we are affirming Black, queer, and trans and disabled lives, that we're unaffirming anyone else, that's not true. And children know that. Children understand that when we are helping the most vulnerable, everybody gets helped. And that is one reason why I think it's so important to do this work with young children who have yet to fully internalize
That's how they're framing collective care to young kids. Collective care is going to be what leads into universal health care, by the way. It's also what's going to lead into the abolition of parental rights. That's how they're teaching collective care to kids. It's just about like, we need to protect everyone and make sure everyone has what they need. Don't you want everyone to have what they need? Don't you want everyone to be cared for? Because when everyone is cared for, that means you're cared for too. That's how they're going to argue for universal health care.
Of the stories and systems of capitalism and patriarchy
Bing!
And white supremacy and all
God
of the systems of oppression that we have internalized and that we need to unlearn. And when you say to kids,
hang on, capitalism, white supremacy, patriarchy, 3 words that all mean the same thing.
Black, queer, and trans and disabled lives, that we're unaffirming anyone else, that's not true. And children know that. Children understand that when we are helping the most vulnerable, everybody gets helped. And that is one reason why I think it's so important to do this work with young children who have yet to fully internalize all of the stories and systems of capitalism and patriarchy and white supremacy and all of the systems of oppression that we have internalized and that we need to unlearn. And
all of the systems of oppression that we have internalized and we need to unlearn. As a reminder for anyone that is confused about this, when socialists say capitalism, they mean private property ownership. Socialists believe that capitalism created white supremacy and racism. That's why they call it systemic racism or institutional racism. Capitalism is the system that upholds racism. Capitalism is the institution that upholds racism. Every single time they're referring to white supremacy, whiteness, racism, they are always referring to systemic racism, which is the institution, the system of capitalism upholding racism. That's what that means. They also believe that capitalism created the patriarchy because they believe that capitalism created the gender binary by putting women in the home doing the unpaid labor of raising the future generation of proletariat workers, and that put men in the workplace where they had all the power and all the money. That is what the patriarchy is, and it was created by capitalism. Let me know if anyone is confused about any of that.
When you say to kids, we want to make sure everyone gets what they need, no one says, well, I'm not going to get what I need. That's not how young children respond.
That's how they're teaching equity.
And children understand that when things are unfair, they're unfair for everyone.
This is how they're teaching equity.
On some level, that is what Black Lives Matter at School is about. Like the affirmative.
These people believe that capitalism is fundamentally unfair. Capitalism, defined as private property ownership, is fundamentally unfair because it means people have different access to different resources. So when they say, well, we just need a system where everyone gets what they need, that means abolishing capitalism and ushering in equity. Equity and capitalism cannot exist in the same place at the same time.
Principles. It's not about we don't want, it's about we want. And I think that is so powerful always to emphasize, is that each principle is clear about what we want.
Milo, thank you for the super chat. And all government schooling. Yes. The very last thing a free people should want is government agents in charge of what their children are taught to think and believe. Separation of school and state. Milo, I'm putting that on a t-shirt. Do you mind? Do you mind if I steal that and put that on a t-shirt? Separation in school of school and mother effing state. Thank you, Milo.
We want dignity for everyone. Well, we want our phones to not go off when we're talking. We want everybody to be safe and to feel seen and loved. And when the most vulnerable people among us feel that way, then we will all feel that way. And so the idea that Black Lives mattered in 2020 and now we're moving on. No, That's not what's happening. People don't have what they need. So we need to make sure that everyone gets what they need. And it is not, it really is true that when we sent, I'm just repeating myself. I'm repeating what everyone said. When we center the most vulnerable, when we center Black children, then we are uplifting everyone. So I'm going to stop because I'm just saying what everyone else has said.
Wait, can I piggyback on that, Lilania? Because literally, like, Black lives don't stop mattering just because other people get fatigued. Like, we are here. We exist. We're not going anywhere. So I think that's a really great point to make, is like, we're not going to stop mattering just because you're tired of hearing about us. We're still going to be here.
And if you're tired of hearing about us, then stop hurting us, right? If you want, right? It's not hard.
And I just want to add quickly, one of the comments that I heard from a New York City teacher about, we're dealing with the migrant issue, the refugees, right? There are a lot of people coming to New York City. So this teacher, their school is overwhelmed. They have all these new students. And so he's like, why do I need to talk about Black Lives Matter? And I said, let me tell you something. You don't know this. Our migrants and refugee children are the most susceptible to anti-Blackness if we don't address it right now. What is going to happen to them? They are going to learn quickly to position and distance themselves from Black Americans. That's the thing that all immigrants learn, right? And we want them to understand that their struggle is a shared struggle with Black Lives Matter. We understand that, right? And so it's important that, yes, we are experiencing a lot of migrants coming to our country, and that's important, but we need to invest in them to understand that Black Lives Matter is about you too and your situation, and we understand that, right? And we want to support you. It doesn't mean, oh, it doesn't matter, it doesn't appeal to you, right? It doesn't matter to you, right? Because you're not Black or you're dealing with an issue that we think is not related, right? It's all related, it's all connected, right? And I think that's important to remind people when they think, oh, we got to move on, right? There's something else that's happening.
Oh, yes. To all of this, we all have to be free. We all do. And you all started to talk about this a bit, but just diving in a little bit deeper here, how do you talk about the guiding principles of Black Lives Matter at school with children? What does that look like? How have those conversations
It's a good question.
gone? Because there's so many early childhood, elementary educators, teacher educators, and pre-service teachers on the call right now who are going to tune in that are looking for those resources.
Hang on. This is a conservative talking point that I have not seen any evidence for. Not everything is like the border crisis is about these people don't believe border shit. Here's what, guys. The border crisis is because socialists do not believe that borders should exist, and because they're trying to overwhelm the system in order to destabilize it. That's what that is about. This is made up. We have no evidence to support this. If you believe this, then I want primary source evidence of the left saying it. We don't make shit up here. We don't invent theories that fit the narrative that we want to sell and then proclaim them to be reality. So bring me some receipts if you want to claim that this is true, but I want primary source receipts only. I don't want pinky swear, trust me, bro. I want primary source receipts.
And the ways that we can have these conversations with young children. So, Lilania, I'll start with you first, and then I'll go to Key and then Makai.
I think what I often do is I just say, how many of you have heard the words Black Lives Matter?
No, that is not at all what they just said. You inferred that. I don't know how you heard that in what they just said, but that is not at all related to what they just said. Gotta listen.
Do you know what those words mean? And this year, my children were like, nope, no idea. And so I said, great, I'm going to teach you. And they're like, oh, wow. Because that's one great thing about little kids, is they want to learn stuff. And so I said, Black Lives Matter is a movement of people who want to make sure that everybody in our community is safe and seen and loved. And there are some places, and you have learned about times when Black people did not have the same rights as white people. And they all know about Martin Luther King. And then I say, that was not so long ago, but it feels like a long time ago because you were all very small. And right now, there are still times when Black people are not treated the same way. They're all horrified, of course, right? Because it's horrifying. They're like, what? How is that? And so I say, The same way that we have rules in our classroom to make sure that everyone is safe, Black Lives Matter is about having some rules that everybody can think about when they're making their communities so that their communities can be safe. And because we spend a lot of time talking about our community, like here's our KC community, here's our kindergarten community, here's our school community. What are our responsibilities? And that's something that I think is really important as we talk to children, is that it's not just about, oh, in your community, everybody needs to be safe. What is your responsibility in keeping everyone safe? Because that way they know they have an active role. And it is a thing that I'm thinking so much about as I have a lot of white students, and understanding that everybody has a role in liberation. Everybody has a job. It's
liberation
not just
means
about
liberate from capitalism.
Some marginalized group having something unfair happen to them and then having to fight back against it. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about making sure proactively that we are all acting in ways that make everyone feel safe. And that can be a little tricky for young children because they are egocentric, but they also at the same time have this deeply ingrained sense of justice and fairness. And they also have a lot of compassion. And so really tapping into that and making sure that everyone knows that they have a role to play, and making sure that our community is a safe place where people feel good, is something that all of the principles really echo. That's what they're all about, is making sure that everyone has what they need. And so when I think about talking to young children, I always, bring it back to our classroom. Like, well, what do we do in our classroom to make sure everyone is safe? And how do we take responsibility for our actions? And what are the actions we need to take? And then making it larger. And kids, I will say that even though there are times when I feel really challenged, I have never found that kids just don't get the big ideas, even with kids who are really concrete. And so it's really important to help them start at a young age so they can just really stretch those muscles and use their imaginations, and also really respect what they're saying and trust them, and to give them opportunities to have a voice and have a lot of agency in the classroom, even when it's sometimes I'm like, I don't know, this seems like this is a bonkers idea, but giving them a chance, because they really can take care of themselves and they can take care of each other, and making sure that they know that and that I expect that of them is something that has been really powerful.
I love how Lelania speaks in the way that she speaks with children. I feel like you're such a solid model, like in real time, of how to do that in the way that you have defined the guiding principles. I'm just like, hey, this works for me. I don't want all the jargon. Like, the simpler, the better, because this really is that simple. And I feel like adults complicate things. So just a shout out to you for that. So I'm not in the classroom anymore. So I can speak from kindergarten's perspective, but also I can speak from when I was a classroom teacher and I taught primarily Black children. And so I felt like my work was really about using the principles as my foundation for how we were engaging with every single thing, and how well my kids love themselves and one another. And I always said, like, if my kids left me and they could advocate completely for themselves and each other, then I did what I came to do. If they could sit here and be like, wait a second, no. If they learn how to say no.
Beth, you know the answer to this, and the answer is it doesn't matter, because Black Lives Matter doesn't actually care about Black lives. They don't care about inner city communities. They don't care about underserved Black populations. They don't care about any of that. All they care about is abolishing capitalism. That is it. So you know the answer to this. This is a useless question to ask. They don't care about that. They never did. Like, why? I don't know why we can't just acknowledge that and just say, like, this is a pointless question to ask. They don't care about it.
The things that were harmful to them, then I realized I was doing what I was doing. But I think that I like to make things. Like, I really love to make things. I like to bring in things that don't exist. I really love to use visuals a lot. I think using visuals is super cool. So, like, one of the units that I created was called Everyday Heroes versus Superheroes through the lens of Black history and resistance. And I actually started that unit when Black Panther, the original Black Panther, was coming out. So my kids were super hyped, right? They were so excited for Black Panther. And kids think about superheroes all the time. So they think about superheroes having all of these external powers. And so one way that I thought about the principles is like, well, how do they show up as like internal, like intrinsic powers for everyday heroes, right? So we have things like empathy, like we have collective value, we have all of this, and thinking about how we can use what exists to show kids models of this in action and allow them to kind of pull from it and then kind of define collectively what this means. Have they heard of it before? But my biggest thing is similar to Lelania. I want to gather all of the information from children first. And so I like to use a lot of visuals and things to do that, especially with young children, right? Like we have like emergent readers. And so like, I love just showing like a picture or video. So like if you have I think with the principles, I love the coloring book because it has those visuals. I would also expand on that if you have the principles in the classroom and like, you can literally take photos of kids, of course, that are like engaging in these values or within the school community or within the greater community. Or you can start off by showing pictures that actually reflect those values. You can play a game where kids try to match them after you define them. But the idea is to also have a visual entry point into this so that kids can look at that and kind of discern for themselves what's going on, what's happening. And that kind of leads me to the woke kindergarten side, which is like, I pretty much use visuals in every single thing. And so one of the ways that I like to define words that I think are related to our liberation specifically, that words that allow us to critique our realities, right, and affirm ourselves, which is what the guiding principles do. I have like a woke word of the day. So you can use that format where I usually like
woke word of the day.
I just made one about ceasefire. I've done one about like strike and protest and all of these things where that is the word. We define it in like a way that Lelania might define it. And then using kind of examples, visual examples, to think and talk about it a little bit more through like 10 different slides and kind of offering that as something that lives and exists in the classroom as well. And then also have 60-second text. So like the other side of things, these are the things that we want, right? Like the guiding principles tell us what we want, but there are reasons that we want these things because on the opposite side of things, there are things happening that we don't want. And those are the conversations that I think people have a hard time with. And that's kind of where I thrive, is to think about how can we have these really critical conversations with young children that really center and affirm these guiding principles, but also show why we need to have them and why they're so important. Because I think talking about the why is what we need to kind of lean into a little bit more. And so the 60-second text aspect of things, and like I teach people how to make these, because it's not about just me making them and y'all taking them. It's just about like, how can they also be generative and what can you make? What can live and exist in your classroom? What do the guiding principles look like in your classroom? Make a 60-second text about it or a classroom book and let it live there, right? And so with my...
I just want it noted that there was a massive, massive, massive amount of conservative influencer over woke kindergarten within the last couple weeks. Libs of TikTok was tweeting it, and all the other usual people were tweeting it, and everyone was outraged over this thing called woke kindergarten. This presentation took place live less than a week ago. So the founder of woke kindergarten, the person who created all of this, the person that they're all reading about, is still just pushing forward as though nothing is even happening, still putting her them's ideas out there, still just doing their thing. It's being completely accepted within education because this is what they want, because they're all indoctrinated into it anyway. And all of that all of the whining, all of the complaining, all of the millions and millions of tweets that were sent on the topic of woke kindergarten accomplished absolutely nothing. It accomplished nothing. Nothing was changed for the people running woke kindergarten. That's what I want people to see. Because a lot of people think that if they get something on the news, that's going to solve the problem. If they get a viral tweet, that's going to solve the problem. I've had a lot of viral tweets, okay? I can tell you that it doesn't actually solve the problem. It makes people outraged. They get their dopamine hit. And then they go on about their business and nothing changes. And this is why the left is winning. Because no matter what happens on Twitter, no matter what Fox News is talking about, they just keep moving forward inch by inch by inch by inch by inch. And you might cause them a little bit of temporary headache. They might be annoyed at you. But like the fact of the matter is most of the time, leftists don't even block you on Twitter when this happens. And I know because I follow an awful lot of them. There are socialist activists that I have streamed about ad nauseum over and over and over again that I will tweet at antagonizing just because it amuses me. They don't block me on Twitter. They don't care because they're just pushing forward. And it's like, at some point, man, at some point, people need to start admitting that the tactics being implemented are not working. The shitposting can be fun and God knows I love it and I'll engage in it just because it amuses me. But I'm also realistic to know that absolutely nothing I do on Twitter makes one single solitary bit of difference. It only makes a difference if people actually do something with it. And most of the time, no one does anything with it other than complain on Twitter.
It text Black Lives Matter, it's showing all of these Black children who were murdered by police, but it doesn't actually mention murder. It says, like, I am Trayvon, right? Like, I was walking. And so it thinks about the really human things that children were doing. And we don't stay in that conversation. We move towards joy, release, and action. And that's where these principles also come in. See, this is what's happening, and these are the reasons that we have these principles. I'm gonna clip it so that so that Makai can go.
Oh my goodness, coming after both of y'all. But I guess it works in the sense that my school, some years more predominantly white than others in terms of racial diversity. I know you both shared the populations you work with. But also I work with, my school has very young children. So we start at 12 months and we go up to 5 years. And so at my school, we use what children are already familiar with and real examples they can connect to. The guiding principles, like, which is so awesome, Lelania, like they serve as like building blocks on each other. So like in order to have collective value, there needs to be some loving engagement and empathy also. And so having such young children at the school at 12 months, like it allows me to witness the progression of how children really get the guiding principles even in the younger classes.
12
with the toddlers,
months. 12 effing months. Are you kidding me? They're not even waiting for pre-K anymore. 12 months.
There are just so many caring interactions that the children experience and then demonstrate with each other. The teachers do a lot of modeling, so like naming feelings, and they also set up the environment to make it safe and home-like. The teachers support children in developing language and positive self-concept. And so using the guiding principles along with like tangible connections, like, for example, they practice using scripts, like, what do you need to feel better? And then they might hand someone an ice pack or a family photo. Also, the toddler and the older children, we call like the pre-K mixed age cohort, they use baby dolls. And the children demonstrate loving engagement. They make connections to the interactions with their own families and caregivers, and also show empathy to the baby dolls. And I'm a big puppet person, and puppets are used with both the toddlers and our pre-K group, and they act out various scenarios that connect with the guiding principles, and also utilize the guiding principles when problem solving, whatever the situation.
They're using puppets and dolls and all this stuff to teach kids as young as 1 year old about collective care. Collective care, again, comes from socialism, because they believe that the community and all the comrades are all responsible for caring for everyone else. So when they say we're just teaching kids empathy and kindness, what they're teaching them is to be part of the collective Borg. They're doing it starting at 1 year old, and they're using puppets and dolls in order to do it. Is anyone comfortable with this? Tayton, thank you for the super chat. They want to make it as early as birthing pods. The birthing pods will display social justice learnings. Well, you know what they did in remember what they did in Brave New World, Tayton? Is that weren't they doing something? Maybe this was not in Brave New World. Maybe this was like in no, you know what it was in? It was in The Island. Did anyone see that movie? It's a great movie. Ewan McGregor, King. In The Island was a movie about like where they were making clones of people for like rich people who, if like a rich person needed a kidney transplant or something, they would be able to get the kidney from their clone, and they were keeping all the clones on like this island. Well, it wasn't an island. It was like in a bunker somewhere, whatever. And then they started escaping, and it was like an action thing and all this stuff, whatever. But the point is that when they were like incubating the clones, they played like images to like put like memories and ideas in their brain when they were still incubating. I mean, is that possible to do with humans that are being born in birthing pods? I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it. So they come out of the womb predisposed to be social justice activists. Or they come out of the womb. I thought that they were going to do this for a while, because we know that they want to control the nuclear biological family. We know that they don't want kids being like the quote unquote property of their parents. And so I thought about this for a while. Like, if they really get what they want, and like everyone is born via surrogacy or via these birthing pod things, like they're going to start doing genetic engineering. They're going to genetically engineer people who are predisposed to be amenable to being part of the collective. That's how, when this is what James Lindsay doesn't fucking understand. When socialists say they want to control the means of production, today, this isn't about the factory. The factory is no longer the primary means of production for like a lot of things. Today, not 100 years ago, today, when socialists say they want to control the means of production, they mean the means of producing people. That's what they're trying to do to get rid of the nuclear biological family. Because they don't want the biological, they believe the nuclear biological family reproduces capitalism, so they have to disrupt the production of capitalism, which occurs in the family, right? So what the means of production that socialists are trying to control now is the production of people. It's the people. What happens when they control the production of people? Then you start getting into genetic engineering. You start to get into all this other bullshit in which people come out of the womb biologically predisposed to wanting to be part of the collective, making them much more controllable. They're probably going to mess with like their cognitive abilities, stuff like that, because you can't have a population that's like questioning things. Going to be a lot of effed up stuff that happens.
Situation is.
And you know, like in Gattaca, like, I think it's fine to use movie references for this because it's things that people understand. You know, like in Gattaca, how it became the norm for everyone to be genetically engineered. Like the whole plot of Gattaca was like one son was genetically engineered and one son was not, right? Well, the only acceptable birth in the future socialist dystopia is going to be one that's genetically engineered. Can't have godchildren, can't have that. Too many biological things at play. Not acceptable.
The older children start like sharing observations about the world around them. So they share what they notice about skin color, disability, exclusion, gender, etc. And so what we do as the educators, we take these observations and we plan opportunities to dive into these topics using the children's literature that we have available, and also create hands-on experiences. So For example, we create self-portraits while focusing on racial identity, or we build accessible structures in the block area, or we dress up like Julian from Julian is a Mermaid in dramatic play. And we're also like learning phrases in a student's language. And so there's so many possibilities for conversations and curriculum. So thank you a million times over, Lelania, for creating this, and also Key for sharing the important work that you do as well.
Oh, there's just so much. I just want to just keep talking with you guys all day. There's just so much you were saying there, but we're going to keep going because we have a couple more questions. If you haven't already, though, please feel free to drop a question in the Q&A function. We do have time later for some questions. There's a couple really good ones in there. We might have to combine some and figure it out, but that is where you can submit your question for any of the panelists or all of the panelists. All right, so as we mentioned, our focus this year for the Week of Action is collective value. So this is a very long question, but it's really important. So what does collective value mean and look like to you?
Good question.
How can we teach and organize for collective value in our classrooms and community? And how can we build authentic, loving, and liberatory partnerships with families and communities, right, to center collective value? And so, again, thinking about that, one of you, I think Lelania said, we start with our classroom and then the kindergarten community, then, right, that's how we help young children think, right? We start in the inner and move out in these circles. And it's the same thing with collective value, right? Thinking in those parts. So again, what does it mean to you? How do we teach and organize for collective value in our classrooms? And how can we build authentic, loving, and liberatory partnerships with families and communities to center collective value? We'll start with Makai, then Lelania, and then Key.
Okay, so collective value to me is caring connections, shared power, welcoming all emotions, respecting all identities, and listening to each other. Collective value is what educators, students, and families should experience in schools and society at large. The young children are learning what keeps them safe and what makes them happy. And at the same time, they're noticing the needs of others. Classrooms can be spaces where children are respected as people who have input, and where families aren't judged, but welcomed into the classroom to build understanding. And in terms of teaching and organizing, start with how classroom rules and agreements are created. Collective value can be the anchor, and then the children can describe what that looks like for them. And teachers can rethink punitive discipline models that reinforce carceral logic and instead engage in restorative justice. Some examples of how I've explored collective value with my students include consent. How do we differentiate between rough play and fighting? Reading books like Yes, No, a first conversation about consent, or Don't Touch My Hair. Practicing asking for consent with puppets. In terms of accessibility, we tour our school building and look for ways that our building is accessible. So whether it's like Braille on signs, ramps, or our elevator. And then I also use it, because it's a big pet peeve of mine, but I use it as a chance to explain why the automatic door button should only be used by people who need it. Because when the kids like just push it all the time, then it breaks. And so we discuss how that's unfair. And
automatic door for me, but not for thee.
With families, they're welcomed into the classroom for like family of the week, story time, sharing how they celebrate a holiday or any occasion, because families support anti-bias curriculum. We recently had a school-wide service project led by a parent to collect children's clothing to donate to a local organization, Martha's Table. Families are welcome to equity and diversity programming, such as book club, where they have the opportunity to do the work so that they can be better for their children, do better for their children. So for example, this year we're reading Michelle Good's Five Little Indians, which is about residential boarding schools. And many of us were never taught about that growing up.
Hang on. Listen, I get that you're into this stuff. I do. Can you please just stop spamming my chat, though? Because we want to make sure the chat is available for things related to the presentation. Appreciate you being here. Please stop spamming my chat. I'm not saying you can't participate. Just make it relevant to what we're watching, please.
And so they're doing their work. And so overall, intentionally engaging with families builds those authentic, trusting, and loving partnerships.
Wow. I'm really inspired. Thank you.
I'm blown away. I don't know what you just said, but I'm blown away. You are stunning and brave and beautiful.
I've been thinking a lot about this in terms of the national prompt about collective liberation. And I've been really loving that.
What does that mean to you?
And
collective
to me, it kind of
liberation.
means, like, until we're all free, ain't none of us free, really.
What does that mean, though?
Just that way that our
but what does
is
that
bound
mean
up with each other, and the importance of solidarity work, and the
what
importance
does that
of
mean?
being co-conspirators. And this year I did a new thing with my class. So we talked about the idea that injustice to one is injustice to all. And I gave a hypothetical, because I was like, can you all get this idea? And they're like, bring us some like real specifics. And so I said,
it means free
I got this kid's permission to use them as an example. And I said, well, what if I said this one kid couldn't use the materials in our class, but everyone else can? And they're like, that's not fair. And I was like, well, why? Like, you can use it. Why do you care about this other kid? And they were really clear that they did not like it. So, like, first of all, they're like, no, not okay. And then I was like, well, tell me why. And they were able to say, and one kid said, well, he's part of our community, so he has a right to use the things in our class. And I was like, yeah.
So I just want to say, so we are at 6:42 right now. I've been yammering too much. I'm going to postpone the start of my community Zoom call until we're done this presentation, because I think this is actually really fruitful. So I apologize to everyone. We will start the community Zoom call as soon as this presentation is done. Please bear with me. It normally starts at 7 p.m., but we're going to go a little bit over.
Yeah, we are doing this.
And I will try to shut up unless I need to.
What would you say to me? And that was where they got stuck. And it was interesting watching them say, I'd say, well, Lalinia, maybe that's not fair. Or I'd say, Lalinia, maybe that kid will feel sad. And so I asked them, I said, friends, I see that you really know how you feel. And you're really clear that you don't like it. You feel sad for this kid and you think I should change. But I notice it's also hard for you to think about what you want to say to me. Why do you think that is? And then, because kids really can get to things, one of the kids said, well, maybe we're afraid that you'll say, well, I'm the teacher and I'm in charge, so I can do whatever I want. And I said, yeah, it takes a lot of courage to speak up when somebody else is in charge. And they were like, uh-huh. And I said, well, what do you think we should do? And one kid said, well, maybe if we all told you, then you would have to listen to us. And I, inside my head, did a little dance, because that exactly, right? Like, we all have to have all of our voices, even when something is not affecting us, because they're like, no, that doesn't actually feel okay. It's not fair. And I think if we can help people understand that our liberation is bound up in each other, and that oppression hurts all of us, because I think as adults, there's just really this idea that, patriarchy hurts women, and homophobia hurts queer people, and white supremacy hurts Black people. But all of those things hurt everyone. It is not good for your soul to oppress other people. It hurts you too. And I think that some people are really starting to get there, but it's a big lump, because, people have worked really hard to make sure we don't know that. Because people with power spend a lot of time making sure that everyone else is fighting over the scraps, and it's a zero-sum game, and trying to pit people against each other. And we see that when there's coalition building, that is when the people in power get frightened. This is not a thing I would say to young children, but a thing I have noticed is that is when people are assassinated. That is when the powers that be are like, oh, no, you can't do that. But that is because that is what works. And I think that it's so important for us to help children know that at a young age. And I'm thinking that especially because I'm teaching some people who are going to grow up and probably have a lot of money and power. Like, I really think that the white boys in my class are going to grow up, and if they don't have an understanding of their responsibility to other humans, then I have not done my job. And I will say that one thing that is funny that has happened in my class that is not always my favorite, but it means I feel like I'm doing the right job, is that kids will sometimes overhear something and say, Lalinia, you did this thing to this other kid, and this is why I don't like it. And I'm really glad that they tell me that. Sometimes they don't have all the information, right? Like, oh, friend, I could tell that kid to do this thing because, you know, they need to actually have this situation because of something that you don't know. But I do feel really good that the kids in my class have learned that I respect them and that I take into account what they say, because speaking up to people in authority is scary. And so what I try to do is, even when I'm like, friend, that you do not have information.
Every single time you guys focus on the race aspect of this, you miss the bigger picture. These people don't care if people are white. I know that you all got distracted when she said, I say to the white boys in my class this. That's to distract you. They don't care if people are white. They care if people are bourgeois. Those are two different things. So please, I'm going to start outlawing this bullshit. I swear to God, there will be no victimized, we are the poor abused victims of the world because we're white bullshit in my chat anymore. We're better than that. Exactly. Collective capitalist guilt. Exactly. Thank you.
And this is actually kind of irritating. I'm trying to get us all out of the room. Is I always try to say, thank you for noticing that. I see that this is what you're doing. Also, here's some information that you don't have, or all of those things. But I want to acknowledge them. Is that when they say, if they can tell me they don't like something I'm doing, and I'm the kindergarten teacher, like I have a lot of power, then they have learned how to advocate for themselves, and they're advocating for others.
All good, Martin. All good.
And that when we teach kids that I think is one of the most powerful things that we can do, because when people can advocate for themselves and others, like that is when we have movements that can't be stopped.
It's like, should I even say anything? Like,
you are so stunning and brave and beautiful.
Yeah, I really hate that for real.
Amazing. Oh my God.
Okay, so all right, ADHD. I have to look at the question. All right. So for me, collective value ultimately means like we keep us safe. Like we keep us safe. It means we're really all we got. We all have different things to contribute. We all have various skills to contribute. All of our humanity matters, right? That we're celebrating our humanity. There's no throwaway person. We're not thinking about throwing people away. That's where we get into the abolitionist perspective of like, hey, like we are people who may cause harm, but we are not going to label ourselves as just harmful people. We need to figure out what it means to work together collectively and to understand one another's values so much that we can sit and figure out ways to repair that harm. Ultimately, it also means for me that like these hierarchies that exist between like the adult children, this is why I refer to children as our comrades, because in my mind, I look to the kids to really figure out how we going to create the futures that we want. Because guess what? We might not even be here. We might not even be here to witness what we want to be able to see. We want our kids to be able to live in a world free of this violence, free of carceral violence and state violence, imperialist violence. But we might not be able to see it.
That all means capitalism.
So I think about kids as comrades, thinking about them as like co-architects of the futures that we want to build. And that can look different ways in the classroom. And I'll get to that. I also think about how animals are our comrades. I think about how the earth is our comrade. Like all of these things that when we think about collective value, we're thinking about all of it, coexisting with all of it. How do we care for one another? How do we care for animals? How do we care for the earth? How do animals care for us? How does the earth care for us? And that leans into thinking about your classroom as an ecosystem. And what that means really to show mutual respect. How does our classroom care for us? And how do we care for our classroom? I'm thinking about collective value. I think a lot about how eradicating those hierarchies can look. And so I'll speak a little bit to like what that might look like in the classroom. Thinking with kids about how we all have roles in our liberation. So like one thing that I do with folks is the social change ecosystem that Deepa Iyer and Building Movement dropped in 2020 was really cool for adults to consider. How are we kind of moving? Like how are we participating in social change, right? Because a lot of people like me, for example, were immunocompromised. And so you can't be at every protest because literally we didn't understand what this killer virus was doing. And, there's so many people that are still dying from COVID. So thinking about like,
this is last
also
week.
how sometimes in organizing spaces, people get shamed for not doing certain things. So reminding kids, and that's I think core tenet too of disability justice as well, is to think about how we all contribute in different ways. And so what I like to do is I like to remix those roles to think about who children are. And I give kids an opportunity to tell us who they are through those roles. And so that's one way to kind of consider having kids be at the forefront of like, wait a second, I got all these gifts and skills and all of that. And so thinking about like, in the morning, for example, like if I do like an opening circle, because I'm going to ground it similar to Lalena, similar to a guy like in what I might do in the classroom. If I'm thinking about how we've co-created our like agreements, right, in our classroom, I used to do affirmations with kids in the morning, both individual and collective. So what are individual affirmations looking like for us? What are collective affirmations looking like for us? But also grounded in our kind of collective values and the agreements that we decided exist with one another. And thinking about those affirmations later on in the day. So at like a closing circle, doing shout outs and apologies. Really to reflect.
Hang on. We got a super chat from Tayton. Stupid Lindsay fans think masks are for hiding identity, even though the DSA said it's a meeting, not a protest. This is why we lose. That's exactly right. Anyone who is telling you that socialists are wearing masks to hide their identity is lying to you. That's not real. That's not real. I know why you think that. But the fact of the matter is, I have been undercover in person at their private meetings where there are only other socialists and they still mandate mask wearing. Why do they mandate mask wearing? Because they are completely convinced that there is still a pandemic. They are completely convinced that everyone needs to wear a mask in order to care for everyone else in the room. That's part of what collective care is. And so, no, James Lindsay, it is not about hiding their identity. It is because they are convinced that there is still a pandemic and that no one is safe unless everyone is wearing a mask. That is reality. If it was really about hiding their identity, they wouldn't be doing it in a room with a closed door with no video cameras where no one else is there except for other socialists. That's just common sense. But they are, and Tayton correctly points out that Kai just said that it's about the immunocompromised and making sure everyone is safe because there are still people dying. They really do believe this, guys. Remember, socialists are in an echo chamber all of their own. They reinforce these delusions to themselves. This is a cult. They only talk to other people in the cult. They are only around other people in the cult. They only listen to other people in the cult. And so if the cult is saying there's still a massive pandemic and people are literally dying, then that's what they're going to listen to.
Was I really with it? Like my affirmation, like this is what I said, like did I do what I said, or is there somebody that I need to apologize to? And that looked like teachers apologizing to kids, teachers apologizing to teachers, kids apologizing to each other, but also in this space of consent, right? Because collective value means I also honor the fact that you might not be ready for this apology, right? Like, and you can thank you for giving it to me, but I don't have to accept it yet because I still feel hurt. And so remembering that, again, our humanity doesn't go away. We're allowed to feel everything. So collective value to me also means we are feelers who are going to feel things, and we need to make sure that we have space for that. So thinking a lot about how you can reconnect what you're doing throughout the day. It also means kind of setting up opportunities for kids to like when I tell y'all, by mid-year, I didn't really have to do nothing for real. Like the kids was running everything. Like when kids needed support, and it can often look like them coming to teachers all the time. But we had set up this like chill spot in the classroom where kids learn how to kind of self-regulate on their own. Like it was a non-punitive space that was super comfortable with, sensory oriented things and silly books and big sand timers. And so like, if you needed to get there, I don't care if you roll, skip, hop, cartwheel, curse me out. I don't care how you got there. Just get there, baby. Just get there. It ultimately turned into kids taking each other there and soothing each other there. So by that time, it was like, can I do this with this person? In the morning, when you're thinking about morning message, we often write it. Give kids a chance to write it and pair kids together that might need a little bit more support. So where are there opportunities for peer-to-peer learning in action? Right? Because we have kids that get singled out in schools all the time because this child may need more support reading, and kids become numbers and kids become leveled text and all of these things. But if you pair kids really intentionally, they're working together to do this. And so ultimately, I never really had to do morning message. My kids was doing it. There's also a way to consider, how are you inviting kids into the space? How are you inviting families into the space? At the beginning of every year,
I want you to notice how the founder of Woke Kindergarten has thought all of this through. Nothing is left to accident. They are very thoughtful and very pragmatic about everything they do. Now, if you listen to the conservative influencers, what they're going to say is, they're literally crazy, they're libtards, they're all mentally ill, they're all crazy. Does this sound like someone who's crazy to you? Doesn't sound crazy to me. Sounds like someone who has thought through every single aspect of the kindergarten experience in order to infuse as much of the far left ideology into that experience as possible, in a way that they don't even need to teach it. They get the kids to a place where the kids are teaching it to each other. That's not mental illness. That's not insanity. That's pragmatism. Rottweiler, thank you for the super chat. This is quite devious and clever. They are making kids to be able to engage in struggle sessions aimed at everyone who isn't on board. Tiny little red guards. Exactly. They're recreating the red guard using the schools to do it. That's exactly right. This is not mental illness. This is not insanity. These are people who have fundamentally different values and are using every mechanism at their disposal to create a society that reflects the world they want, not the world we currently have.
We used to ask families, what are your hopes and dreams for your child? To think about grounding that type of collective value, your hopes and dreams, because a lot of parents get stuck on, I want my child to read, write, boom, boom, boom. But like, what are your hopes and dreams? And not only asking the families, but asking the kids too. And then giving an opportunity for the families to hear what their kids were saying and for the kids to hear what their families were saying and to check in on that at the end of the year. So really kind of grounding this in like the very humane aspects of things that get missed sometimes in schools. I'm thinking if I'm missing anything. The last thing I will say is also thinking about, if you know how people have questions of the day, sometimes I like to do wonderings. So how do we wonder about the world that we want to create? What are we wondering about in our classroom? Could we potentially wonder about some type of harm that was caused before and ground the wondering in the repair, ground the wondering in the freedom dream that we have? And the wondering can be anything, right? And so thinking about how you can have something like that kind of wondering of the day. And also you can have families participate in that as well. I'm gonna stop rapping because I keep going.
You gave me a great idea to do with my kids, wonderings, right? Have them, what are you wondering about? Like I make these poor kids tell me stories for rides to school. So now I'm like, how can I bring in wondering? So thank you. That is really awesome.
Yes, I'm taking so many notes from everything that you all have shared. You've been so generous with your time, with your resources. And speaking of resources, what are some additional resources that you'd like to share with the community? I know in the Q&A, some folks are just so hungry for those resources. So is there anything that we haven't talked about tonight that you just want to lift up in this space? Any resources? Key, I'll go to you first, and then I'll go to Makai and then Melania.
Lately I've been making a lot of zines. And so
zines.
issue.com/wokekindergarten has
zines are woke propaganda. Now we're doing a project in my community right now led by Honest Dog Allison, who is awesome. We're gonna be reclaiming zines to make our own propaganda. But like zines are, because zines were like part of like the punk rock scene. That's where they came from. And then the woke appropriated them to make propaganda for their bullshit. And so we're gonna be doing our own zine project, which actually I'm really excited about. I think it's gonna be really cool. But every time you hear the word zine, unless it's something that I'm doing and my community's doing, you got to think woke propaganda, because it's all, they have entire classes on this bullshit. Let me see. I found a presentation teaching. Yes, please DM it to me. Always DM me things. You never have to ask to DM me something. Just DM it to me. Send it to me. Get it to me. If it's not useful, I'll ignore it, but it might be useful. So never ask permission. Just DM it to me and apologize later if I don't like it.
Has a bunch of zines. My website has all of the things that I've talked about and more, like read alouds and things like that. That's wokekindergarten.org. And then the YouTube has a bunch of read alouds and 60-second texts. And then on our Patreon, I'm about to start working groups again, because I find that like once I release something, it's been really cool to be able to kind of work through those and like collectively plan together.
So Woke Kindergarten is funded via Patreon. This is not just about school districts paying for this, and you need to hear this, because what that means is individual teachers in any school district can go and give a couple dollars a month on Patreon to support this woke kindergarten bullshit, and then they get access to the resources. Does everyone understand that? This is not just about the big story that conservatives have been reading about of this one school district that paid them like what, $250,000. That's important, don't get me wrong, but how this actually works is she's got a fucking Patreon. Oh, I'm sorry, them has a fucking Patreon where any teacher in any school district, regardless of whether the school board has approved it or not, can go and give a couple dollars a month to this Patreon, or even download stuff for free maybe, and use that in their classrooms without you knowing about it. If James Lindsay is posting something that I would find hilarious or relevant, yeah, DM me. Most people do. Like, this is the thing. Ever since I know more about what James Lindsay's talking about now, because ever since James Lindsay blocked me on Twitter, people send me James Lindsay's posts like all the time. You just got to screenshot them for me. I mean, I have a sock account where I can go look if I wanted to, but people send me his stuff all the time. Go ahead.
And also whenever I like make a zine, for example, or something, I'll put the PDF on the Patreon. So I'll leave it.
First, I want to shout out a few other resources, and then I'll get to my own. If you have not started reading the First Conversation series, I highly, highly recommend. Big shout out to Megan Madison and the team. The We Are Little Feminist collection is lovely for toddlers and even older children. They have beautiful photographs of real people, and it's not too much text on each page. And socialjusticebooks.org has tons of book lists, and even some specific to Black Lives Matter at school. And so I mentioned earlier that I co-authored a book with 3 colleagues. The title is Reflection, Perspective Taking, and Social Justice, Stories of Empathy and Kindness in the Early Childhood Classroom. And the focus of my chapter is empathy as a foundational Black Lives Matter guiding principle. And I share how I use the book Miss Tizzy with my students to not only center empathy, but also so many other guiding principles, including collective value. And so if you're interested, it is available for pre-order on Red Leaf Press.
I also really love the First Conversations books. They've been really helpful for me. I just dropped in the chat the Haymarket video that people might have seen. It's a couple years old, but it's with
Haymarket.
and Goldie Muhammad and Bettina Love, and it's about abolition education.
We've watched that. We've literally watched that. That's the one with Dina Simmons, where Dina Simmons calls to abolish capitalism, abolish whiteness as well. That's from Haymarket Books. Haymarket Books, of course, is the largest socialist book publisher in the United States. We have literally watched the presentation that she just talked about. I clip it all. I've used the clips from it all the time.
And I just, every time I watch it, it just helps me just think more deeply. I will also say that Black Lives Matter at School has a new guide that is so amazing.
I covered that on my Substack.
And that's been really helpful. And so I feel like that's just like, those are just some resources that people should.
I did a full evaluation of that guide.
Through. Those are things that have always helped me in my work. And, you know, as people are like, but Lilinia, you've been teaching Black Lives Matter in school for so long, and you like even wrote a book about it. And I'm like, yeah, and I'm still changing my lesson plans and doing stuff because things change. And as teachers, you know, it can be really isolating. That's one of the reasons why I love conversations like this. So I can just be in community with people who are also doing this kind of work, and for us to hear ideas from each other. And I mean, I just took a million notes while Key was talking. I was like, I'm gonna do all these things in my classroom tomorrow, or maybe not tomorrow, but just so that we can think together and create together, and then also be responsive to our students. You know, we have different kids every year. And every year kids come in with different understandings, with different needs. We might be in a new school. And so just going back to some of these things has been really helpful for me, just to kind of reground myself.
Can I add a couple?
Yes.
I didn't want to talk too much, but there's this podcast. I don't know if they've continued it, but it's called Good Night Black Child. I really, really, really love that podcast so much. It's so sweet. I also Lessons in Liberation. That text is really dope.
Why is it frozen? Why is it frozen?
Nia. Project Nia Sunset. It's Mariam Kaba's work. They sunset, but they have so many resources, like so many zines. I mean, like on restorative justice, transformative justice. I mean, it's absurd. And they also had something called Queenie's Crew that was really dope. So look into Project Nia. All of that's online for free. They also have an issue site like issue.com, I think, / Project Nia. Those are really dope. So wanted to add.
Awesome. Thank you. Hopefully you guys have seen all the resources in here. We'll definitely share many more. I'll drop a doc that has some resources too that we at Defending the Early Years created to promote Black Lives Matter at School Week of Action. So lots of resources. Lots of questions too, but we only got time for one. So first I'm gonna get the short one out of the way. They wanna know, do y'all do PD? The answer is yes. I know Lelania does. I know Key does.
PD is professional development. So a teacher has just asked them if these people can come do professional development training for their schools, paid for by your taxpayer dollars. Congratulations.
I know I do. I know Makai might. I don't know if she does, but she should. So yeah. So please, Key, Lelania, Makai, drop whatever contact information you want in the chat to everyone so that people can contact you directly about professional development opportunities. Please share that. So the other questions, there's a lot. It's so hard to pick one, y'all. There's so many. But I think what I'm seeing, and I guess I'll ask this question because I think it's important. I think what people are asking is thinking about how do you do this work? And Lenny, you spoke about this a little bit with the powerful white boys in your classroom, but like there are a few questions about doing this work with non-Black children, right? How do you engage them with this in a way that's not tokenizing, in a way that uplifts Black voices, in a way that really is collective value for them and doesn't cause harm to the Black students in the class, right? If they may say or do something, right? How do you do that? I think is one question that a lot of people have on their minds. Lelania, why don't you start? Because the first question was directed towards you, I know, but they actually wrote your name, and but I'm combining that with a couple other questions, so we'll let you start.
You spell my name right, then you definitely get some extra points. So I think that I definitely want to start with our community. Like before I even mention Black Lives Matter, right? Like we have to have a safe and caring community first before we do anything that might just open up harm, right? Because I don't want my 3 Black kids to suddenly have, like, I don't want to be that person who makes kids feel like I felt when I was in predominantly white institutions, right? So that's not what I want. And when you have a caring classroom community, then there's a lot of other things you can do because kids have understandings about how we treat each other. So there isn't a like, well, let's all look at this person. And I will also say that because I'm a Black woman and I identify as a Black woman, that also makes it safer for a lot of kids. And it means that kids can also direct questions at me and not children. So that is a conundrum that I don't have like a great cookie cutter answer for it. Like there really is that like we have to create the space, which is not about a lesson plan. It is about how we be in some ways. Like how are we? And what are we bringing and what kind of respect are we showing the people of color that are in our spaces? Are we noticing that maybe the only people of color in our spaces are the people who are cleaning up after us? How do we leave our classrooms for those people? How do we talk about that? That is something that is real. And so I think that's a really important, is that how is our classroom? What's this container of safety that we've created? And then again, thinking about, do you want things to be unfair? Young children don't. And I think that is
this is how they teach them equity. Like, she said that like 15 times.
When you watch something be unfair, and you can see this in young children, is that like when you watch really young kids, if a kid gets hurt, other kids, look at them with concern. They go to help them. Like there are all these studies that show very young children comforting other children. And so really tapping into that and saying, well, we have a job. Our job is not just to like not hurt other people. Our job is to keep other people safe. Like going back to that responsibility that we have. So it's an action. It's not just a passive, don't hurt people, because that's not enough. Because if we just have all the white people in the world just suddenly being nice, guess what? Racism still exists. We are still going to be harmed. So we have to actively.
If we have all the white people in the world suddenly being nice, racism is still going to exist, because this is not about skin color. It never was about skin color. It is about the system that perpetuates racism, the system that created slavery, which is capitalism. That's what they're referring to every time. She just said, if every white person in the world was nice to us, racism would still exist, because it's not about skin color. It's about the system that has been created and perpetuated by capitalism, which they define as private property ownership. That's the system that they believe created slavery in the first place. That's the system that they believe created systemic disparities in the first place. And they believe the only way to solve for those disparities is by abolishing the system that created it in the first place. And that system is capitalism, defined as private property ownership.
Work for making sure that things are fair. So I hope that is like a good, short, quick answer.
I have a quick thing to add.
Please.
So a very tangible thing to do is, you know how like, especially in early childhood, sometimes we'll start units. It's like, who am I? And it's rooted in this question. And like, of course, that question can come up throughout our entire lives because it shifts and changes. But I like to start with rooting it in who I am and who we are. And so thinking about this idea of who I am brings an opportunity for kids to think about who literally, like, what are you bringing to the space? Who are you? We want to get to know all of you. And then moving towards the who we are, that collective
capitalism is
of really creating. That goes back to what Lelania was saying. And that's what I wanted to add is here's one way to kind of help create that classroom culture that can get us to be able to have those conversations of like, who are we, and using those guiding principles to kind of guide us and think about our shared values, thinking about if we know who we are, like culturally, thinking about culture, and then going towards the who we are, like what is the culture of our classroom, and moving towards that. That's one way to kind of tangibly ground this work.
I love that. And it's so important. It's really it's the modeling, it's the setting up the space where kids feel like they can be in this relationship with you and each other, right? And that safety is so important. Makai, please.
Sure. So I guess I'll add more on the curriculum-y side of things. And so, more recently, we had Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and Ijoma Jordan has written really well about this. But, you have parents like, oh, are you going to talk about Dr. King? And I'm like, wait, hold on. Like, first, there's some scaffolding that is necessary, right? Like prior to. So I explained to a parent, I said, well, first we might read like all the colors we are and like even first understand like why do we have skin color? What is it for? What does it do, etc. And then maybe go into our skin, which introduces like racism and the history of that and what that looks like. And then, then we work our way. But after that foundational piece that Lalenia and Key just shared, it takes, time and effort before getting to like the deeper things.
Yeah. And I think that's so important, that we don't want to people think we just got to jump into the harshness with young children, and they don't want that. And that sends a message about how we view this stuff, if that's what we're starting with.
Yep.
Right? But how do we start with the love, the who we are, what we bring to the table, the who we want to be, right? And how we want to live. And yeah, it's super important. Thank you.
I care far less about her teeth than I care about what she's doing in schools. And I would suggest refocusing on that.
I know there's some others, but that's what we're going to get to right now.
Yeah, I wish that we could just sit and chat all day, because I have just enjoyed this conversation so much, and I'm leaving with so many tangible resources, ideas, but also just inspiration to continue to do the work. And so thank you to our panelists, to Lalenia, to Key, to Makai, for sharing resources, for sharing your expertise, for sharing your ideas. We're just so grateful that you created time and space to be in community with us today. Thank you to my co-moderator, Denisha. I appreciate you and your partnership in this collaboration. Thank you to the ASL interpreters, Shannon and Crystal, for joining us. We always appreciate having you with us. Thank you to the Black Lives Matter at School crew who are working behind the scenes.
We're going to call it there. There's a couple more minutes of thank yous left, but I think we've got all that we need to get. This was a really fruitful presentation. I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me. Thank you, Allison. This was very eye-opening. I appreciate you. Guys, I have to run because I am late for my community Zoom call. Now, if you want to join the community Zoom call and talk to us behind and maybe even get a little bit more information about what that cryptic thing was I was talking about at the beginning of the stream today, head over to activelyunwoke.com. Not that one. That's my main website. You can head over there too. But where you really want to go is to the Substack, which is Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. Sign up as a supporter for $8 a month or $80 a year. You can click on this article right here, which is my newsletter that was supposed to go out yesterday, but went out today. And you can scroll all the way down to the bottom, and down underneath this red box for supporters, you will find 2 Zoom links. The first one is for today, right now. The second one is for Wednesday at noon. Come join us on a private, unrecorded Zoom call where we will chat and spill the tea for a couple of hours. And that's all I have right now because I got to go, guys. But thank you for joining me. I will be back tomorrow for more nonsense and shenanigans. And yeah, that's all we have for today, guys. Thanks for hanging out. Make sure you're subscribed on whatever you're talking on or whatever you're watching on. And I'll see you guys tomorrow at 5 p.m. Have a good one.